We begin today the Gemara Daf Chof Aleph, about 10 lines into the Yamut. Omar Rave, so Rave said, this is a hemshech to what we spoke about before, regarding the Shnius la'arayis. Those arayis that Chachamim made excited and they asked them. So Remez l'Shnius v'natayrim minayim. Where is there a hint for the fact that Chachamim come along and make the Isurim of arayis the Shnius? Shenema, the pasuk says, Ki es kol atayei v'Yisrael also anshei haaretz. All of these abominable things the people of the land did, and this refers to the arayis. So the language the pasuk uses is hatoyevos ha'el. So the Gemara says ha'el. The term ha'el means koshes, that these are very, very bad things, bad arayis, on a very low level. The klal, so the fact that the Torah uses hatoyevos ha'el, so from this we can understand the ikerakis, that there are also other arayis that are aser, and they're lighter than the ones that are mentioned explicitly in the pasuk. What are those lighter arayis that are also aser? Shniyos. Those are the arayis that the Chachamim added and made aser. We'll see that here, we're going to learn today the list of all the shniyos that Chachamim added to what the Torah says. Now where do we see that this term ha'el means that it's something which is very, very harsh? Well, how do you know that that's the translation of the word? Because another pasuk says, Ves eile ha'aretz lokach. And the strong ones of the land it took. So you see the word el means strong or harsh or strong, difficult. Shall we say that this pshat that Rav said argues on what Rav Levi said? Amar Rav Levi, because Rav Levi said, Koshe oinshan shal midais yosem oinshan shal arayis. The punishment for one that's using unjust measurements, someone that's not honest with the measurements that he's using, the weights, is more harsh than a person that gets judged and punished for being over on the arayis. Why is it? Shezeh nema ben el. Because over here regarding the arayis, the Torah says the term ki es kol ha'te'eves ha'el, and v'zeh nema ben ele. And over there by the midos it says ki toyaves Hashem kol oise ele. So over there it uses the term ele. And the eile with the added hey is actually harsher than the word eil without a hey. So before the Gemara said that the word eil means that it's something which is very harsh. But Rab Levi seems to be saying, no, the word eil without the hey, that's something which is not so harsh as the word eile, when dafka eile is harsher. So the Gemara answers, it's not a contradiction. Eil kosha. The word eil, let's call it eil, that is something which shows a harsh level of arayis. The eile, when it says eile with the hey, kosher me'el. That's even worse. That's even lower. That's even harsher than eil. So the Gemara says, "Nagabe arayis." When you look in the psukim by arayis, nami hoksiv eile. It also says the term eile. So you're learning out from this that it says as kol ha'te'eves ha'el. But the truth is that by arayis it also says the term eile. Answers the Gemara, Hahu lemuute midis mikoris. The only reason it says is kol ha'te'eves ha'ela regarding arayis. Eila is saying only these. Only here you'd be chayiv koris and not by a person that use unjust midis. So in other words, if not for this limud that it says here eila, I would think to say maybe just like by arayis it uses the term toyevos. And by midas, it also uses the term toyavas Hashem. Maybe I should compare them to one another. Just like there's kodesh by arayis, there should be kodesh by the midas as well. So therefore it says eila to say that only by arayis there's kodesh and not by the midas. Frag the Gemara, say if so, elamai chumrayu. So then what is the harsh punishment that's worse by a person using unjust weights, more even than arayis? If we're saying that dafka arayis is chayiv kodesh, and if you use the unjust weights, there is no chiyuv kodesh. So why are we saying that that's more severe of a punishment? Answers the Gemara, because hani efshe b'tshuva, person that used unjust weights, so it's again a person that is over on the isar of arayis. That is, it's possible for a person to do tshuva for this. And hani lo efshe b'tshuva, a person that uses unjust weights, you can't do tshuva for this. So Rashi explains by the arayis that the Gemara says you could do tshuva. That's talking about a case where a person did not give birth yet to a child, which is a mamzer. So before there's a birth of a child, so for that aveda itself of the prohibited relation, a person could do tshuva. But when it comes to a person that's in a store, for example, he's using unjust weights and he stole from a rabbim. When you steal from a rabbim, you don't know who you have to return the money to. So therefore you can't do tshuva for that. Rashi brings, there's a Gemara that says we learned this Gemara also. that you have to give for the rabbim. You have to go and give money for tzarchei rabbim. That will be considered to be a tshuva. But Rashi says it's an incomplete tshuva. It's because you're not really returning the money to the person that you stole it from. So therefore you can't do tshuva for this. Okay, so this is the source. Rava said for shniyas min ha-Torah, because it says in the pasuk kol ha-tiyeh v'se'el. Gemara brings another opinion. Rav Yudah ma mehocha. Rav Yudah says the source is from here. It says a pasuk, and this is a pasuk that says regarding Shlomo HaMelech, pasuk in Koheles, that v'izain v'chokar tikken mishalem harbe. Shlomo HaMelech was izain. What does izain mean? So here the Gemara is explaining the word izain to mean that he made handles. And he chokar, he looked deeply in tikken, and he made mishalem harbe, different mishalem for the Torah. What does this mean? So the Gemara says the following mashal. V'amar ula, amar Rabbi Lazar, kaidim sheba Shlomo. Before Shlomo HaMelech came to the world, the Torah was compared to a basket that has no handles. Till Shlomo HaMelech came, and he made handles for the baskets. So Rashi says that the aznayim, the handles of the baskets, that's a remes to the shniyas, to the arayis, that Chachamim asrid, or really what the pasuk is saying is that Shlomo HaMelech instituted these arayis. Because just like a basket, if you don't have handles to hold on to it, the basket could easily fall out of your hands. Same thing if you don't make these additional safeguards of shniyas, la'arayis, the isurim of the Torah, you can easily slip and be over. So he made handles, he added additional isurim, so that will keep these isurim in place that you shouldn't slip. A third opinion the Gemara brings, Rabbi Shi says, the pasuk says, Pra'eyu, this is also a pasuk, the Mishlei, so it says, Pra'eyu al taver Sata me Allah va'avir. So how's the Gemara teaching this pasuk? Pra'eyu, so Rashi says, the Gemara here is teaching it to mean you should make it very strong. You should intensify this. You should intensify the Yisurim of the Torah al taver. So like this, you won't be over on it. The word pra'eyu is like the term of gadol pera, when hair grows very long. So over here as well, it means you should extend. You should add to the Yisurim of the Torah, so you should keep away from those things that the Torah says are asa. So the Gemara says now, Rav Ashi explained what this means. Mashal de Rabbi Shia, an analogy for what Rabbi Shia here said. They should extend the Yisurim of the Torah. Lama David Daime, what is this compared to? La'adam meshame pardes, a person that's safeguarding an orchard. Meshamre bibachotz, if he stands on the outside and he guards it there, kula mishtamer. So the entire orchard will be guarded. Meshamre bibafnim, but if he's standing on the inside guarding it, shalafan of mishtamer, so where he is on the inside there in that place will be guarded, but shalach ravena mishtamer. But behind him or on the outside, that will not be guarded. So that's a mashal as well for the shniyas la'arayis, that the chachamim are adding more isurim on the outside, so even those should also be kept. That was the mashal that Rav Ashi gave. But the Gemara says this is not a good mashal. V'had Rav Ashi, this mashal of Rav Ashi, bedusihi. It's not good, it's nonsense, it's not a good mashal. Some Rishonim actually say that it doesn't mean that Rav Ashi is the one that made the mistake, that there were students that repeated this mashal in Rav Ashi's name, and really Rav Ashi could have never said this mashal. Why isn't it a good mashal? Hasam, in the analogy that he brought of the person that's guarding an orchard, shalafan of miyah mishtamer. If he's standing guard on the inside, so there where he's standing guard will be guarded. But what's the whole point over here of the fact that the Chachamim added additional safeguards? Ilav shniyos, if not for the fact that you have those additional isurim that the Torah made, paga berva gufa. So not only you're not going to keep those, but even the isur of the erve itself, which is on the inside, so to speak, the isur that the Torah made, will also not be kept. The whole point of the Chachamim adding additional isurim is so that you should keep even the isurim that the Torah said. Kahana Amar, another opinion, the source of why Chachamim made additional isurim of arayis mehacha. Because the pasuk there says in the end of the pasha of arayis, or shmartem, es mishmarti, that you should make a safeguard, you should keep what I told you to keep. So this double lashon means asu mishmeres l'mishmarti. You should make additional safeguards to what the Eibishter says you should keep, and that's the shniyas that the Chachamim added to the isurim of arayis. Amalei Abaye le Rav Yosef. So Abaye said to Rav Yosef about this last drasha of Rav Kahane, if so, hadai raisihi. If so, the Torah itself is commanding you to do this. So the shniyas la'arayis should not be yasim the Rabbanon, they should be yasim in Torah. And says the Gemara, dai raisa, yeah, you're right. You see it, you can darshan it from the pasuk here in the Torah, but upir Rabbanon, the Chachamim were the ones that explained what it means. So therefore, it's not explicit in the Torah. Fragt the Gemara, but still, kol ha-Torah nami. All the Torah as well, Pirsha Rabbanon. You have many things in the Torah, many mitzvahs, many loisases, that the psukim, the way it's written, is not understood, and the Chachamim elaborate and explain what it means, and it's still considered to be a ism in a Torah. So this as well should be. Elo, so the Gemara answers, not midrabanon. In this case, it's only a ism midrabanon. Ukra asmachta balma. This pasuk, this drasha of Vishmartim is Mishmarti, is just an asmachta that the Chachamim are leaning, they're bringing a source for this concept, but it's not really a clear drasha, like all the other drashas you have in the Torah, whether it's a Hekesh, Gzeir Shava, Kal V'chaimer. Those are things that are considered to be more clearer drashas, and they're min Torah. Over here, it's only an asmachta for the Chachamim to create this additional isurim of the Shnias. Okay, so now the Gemara brings over here what are exactly all of these additional arayas that the Chachamim asked as shnias, a secondary isurim, in order to make a safeguard to the isurim of the arayas min Torah. Tana Rabbanon, so we learned in Abraisa, mahem shniyois. What are those secondary arayas? Aim imay. So the first one is the mother of a mother. The mother is asam min Torah, but aim imay, the grandmother, that's a isim Rabbanon. Ve'aim aviv, or the same is also the mother of a father. And Rashi says, even though that over here, this Isra of Eim Aviv is also because it could be confused with Eim Imai, because they're both referred to as a grandmother. The Gemara will say soon. So the Chachamim asked that as well. And the other Isra is Ve'eshes Avi Aviv, the wife of a grandfather. Eshes Avi, the Eshes Aviv, the wife of a father, even if it's not your mother, is Aser, Min Torah. Then the Chachamim added and asked Eshes Avi Aviv. And similar, they included in that Isra, Eshes Avi Imai. Even though Eshes Avi Imai is sort of a secondary Gzeira, but nevertheless it's not considered to be a Gzeira l'Gzeira, because it's the same point, like I said before, in order not to confuse, since Avi Aviv and Avi Imai, person refers to both of them as a grandfather, so therefore the wife of a father's father or a wife of the mother's father, they made the same Gzeira. And also they asked Eshes Achi Ha'av Mina'im, the wife of the brother of a father, if it's a brother from the mother, right? So the Min Torah, it's only aser if it's Min Av, and the Chachamim aser even if it's also Min Ha'im as well. Or Ve'eshes Achi Ha'im, the wife of a brother from your mother, Min Av, even though you share the same father. So this is also not aser Min Torah, but the Chachamim aser this as well. And also because it could be confused with Eshes Achi Av Min Ha'im. So since these two are very similar, Chachamim asked both of them. And the Kalas Benoi, a daughter-in-law of your son. So Min Torah, a daughter-in-law is Aser. And the Chachamim asked and added to that also the daughter-in-law of your son. Kalas Bitoi, daughter-in-law of your daughter. The Gemara, the Brais here adds different arayas that Chachamim did not Aser, that are mutter. Mutter Adam Be'eshes Chamav. A person is allowed with a wife of his father-in-law. Of course, not his mother-in-law, but another wife that his father-in-law got married to, that's, Chachamim did not ask that. Ube'eshes chayrgoy, or with the wife of a stepson, right? Your wife's son, it's not your son, it's your wife's son. So his wife is mutter as well. But v'aser bebas chayrgoy, but your stepson's daughter, that will be aser to you. And the Gemara will actually point out in a moment that that's actually something which is aser min Torah. Because there's a pasuk that says that your wife's granddaughter is aser to you. So over here, your stepson's daughter is your wife's granddaughter. So that's really aser min Torah. V'chayrgai mutter be'ishtay. So your stepson will be mutter with your wife. Right? So that's a different wife that you have. So if this is your stepson from one wife, will be mutter with a different wife. Ubitoy, or your stepson will be mutter with your wife. They're not brothers and sisters. They'll be mutter to one another. Now, so the Braisa points out an interesting thing regarding the halacha, one of the halachas that I just said here. Ve'eshes chargai, the wife of your stepson. Oimeres loi could say to the father, the stepfather, Ani muteres lach. I'm allowed to get married to you. But ubiti, my daughter, asura lach. She will be asur to you. Right? My daughter is considered to be the granddaughter of your wife, so she will be asur. But the wife of the stepson, she will be asur. Weiter the Braisa says, this is the conclusion of the Braisa. Okay. So now the Gemara asks on this case that we just spoke about, and it mentioned before that is bas chargai. Your stepson's daughter will be asur to you. And it listed it over here amongst the shnias, things that are only awesome with the Rabbanan. The Gemara, Bas Chorgoi de Raisihi, the daughter of your stepson, that's awesome in Atayre. The Chsiv as Bas Bina, as Bas Bita, the granddaughter of your wife, even if it's not your son, it's a stepson, that the granddaughter, but still it's asur, it's your wife's granddaughter. So that's awesome in Atayre. Why is it mentioned here in this Braisa that speaks about the shnias? Answers the Gemara, Mishum de Kabai lemisni Seife. So the only reason it's mentioned here is because in the Seife of this Braisa, the Braisa wanted to show you an interesting thing, which is that Eishes Chorgoi Aymeres Loi Ani Muteres Lach. The wife of your stepson says to you, I am mutter to you, but ubiti. But my daughter, even though you may think that this is a further relation to you, but nevertheless, my daughter Asurulach, she will actually be also to you minatayre. So va'afal gav de biti asurulach midayraise, even though my daughter will be also to you minatayre bididi legaze berabbanan. But for me, regarding me myself, in other words, my wife that's married to me, that will not be also to you, not even midrabanan. That's the chiddush of the case that the Braisa here wants to say. So therefore, ton reisha nami. So therefore, in the reisha as well, it says bas chargai. It lists this case of bas chargai, even though it's a iser minatayre, but it wants to show you this unique thing that you find there, that the wife of your son-in-law, not son-in-law, sorry, a wife of a stepson will be mutter, totally mutter, and the daughter of a stepson will be totally asr, even minatayre. That's the only reason it's mentioned here. So now the Gemara asks, this kind of interesting thing you could say regarding one of the other cases that the Braisa mentioned. Ihachi, if so, Eishes Chamav, a wife of a father-in-law, Nami, you have also a similar thing. Taime, you should say, she could come and say, Ani muteres lach, I am allowed to get married to you. Right, a wife of a father-in-law, that's allowed. Chachamim didn't make any issa for that. But ubiti asurulach, but my daughter would be asur to you. Why is her daughter asur? Because her daughter is a sister to his wife. They share the same father, so it's a sister. So over here you have the same concept that the daughter is asur minat Torah, but the mother is totally mutter, even midrabanan. So why didn't the Braisa? The Havya Chais Ishtay. So the Braisa, the Gemara spells out. So the daughter would be asur because it's a Chais Ishtay. But the mother, which is the wife of the father-in-law, for that there's no isur at all. So why doesn't the Braisa mention that? Answers the Gemara, it's not the same to the example that the Braisa said. Why? Ha psikele and ha le psikele. The case that the Braisa mentions, right? The Braisa pointed out the case of a stepson's wife. A stepson's wife is mutter, but a stepson's daughter is asr. That's psikele. That's always a isser regardless. The granddaughter of your wife is always going to be asr. Doesn't matter what the situation is. But halay psikele, when it comes to your wife's sister, a wife's sister is not always asr to you. While you're married to your wife, the sister is not alive. If a person's wife passes away, then he's allowed to get married to the wife, to the sister, that is. So therefore, this is not a case which is always so clear that this is the halacha this way. So therefore, the Braisa does not mention this. Talk to Gemara Amarav. Huh? Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Amarav. So now Rav said regarding these cases over here, the shnias that it mentioned, all these additional isurim that Chachamim said. Arba noshim. So 4 of these women that were mentioned here in this list, yesh lehen hefsik. So the Chachamim came and added the Isser, 1 generation up or 1 generation removed, but there's a hefsik. It doesn't extend any further up. You don't go up any further generations to say that the Isser extends even another generation up or another generation down. Whatever it was mentioned, that's what the Isser is, but not another generation further. Now the Gemara says, Nokat Rav biyodei tlas. Rav knew, and he explained 3 of this list over here, where the Issa remains only for what was mentioned, but not a generation further up or a generation further down. So he mentioned 3 of them. One is Eishes Achi Ha'eim Mina'av. So this Shnia, this erva that Chachamim Aserd, Eishes Achi Ha'eim Mina'av. So it's only that which is Asr, but not a generation up further than that. Or the Eishes Achi Ha'av Mina'eim. This is also an Isser where the Isser is only on that generation and not any other generation further than that. And then, on the third one, Rav mentioned that the Isser is only this, Kalosai, a daughter-in-law. Now when it says here kalasai, the Gemara is soon going to explain, it doesn't mean a daughter-in-law, it means a daughter's daughter-in-law, because a daughter-in-law is asa min ha-Torah. Now, so these cases over here, that it says that the Issa remains only for that generation, but not another generation up, so Rashi explains the reason is because these Yisurim that Chachamim added, they are additional Isurim in a case where it's impossible, even if you go a generation down, closer relation to you, it's impossible to come to Issa min ha-Torah. So for example, when it comes to the Shniya that Chachamim added, Eim Imai, a mother's mother. So over there, that Isser of Eim Imai will go even further, generations up, as far Eim Imai, as far up as you want. Why? Because if you go back down Eim Imai, then you go to the Imai, the mother, that's a Erva Mamish, min ha-Torah. So therefore, if it begins with a level of Imai, which is a Issa min ha-Torah, so then it goes up, Eim Imai, endlessly. The Issa always remains. But over here, when it comes to Eishes, Achia, Eim min ha'Av, these are Gzeiros that Chachamim made, where if you go closer and you come to the person, there is no Issa min ha-Torah here, B'chlal, in this case. It's a secondary Gzeira sort of that Chachamim made. So over here, the Gzeira is only for Eishes, Achia, Eim min ha'Av, but not a generation up from this. Zeiri Maisef, now Zeiri came and added what the fourth case is. So right, the Gemara said that Rav said that there were 4, but he only said 3. In other words, he had a Mesaida that there are 4 cases that Chachamim did not add more than what it is, but he only said 3. So Zeiri came and added what the 4th case is. Af Eishes Avi Imai. The same thing is also regarding Eishes Avi Imai. Over there, the Isser is only for Eishes Avi Imai, but not Eishes Avi Imai. So it doesn't go a generation higher than that. Omer Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak said, V'simanach, the simon for what Zeiri added, the Eloi the Rav, that the one that he added is one generation up from what Rav spoke about. Because Rav spoke about Eishes Achia Eim, or Eishes Achia Av, so that's a generation closer. Zeiri spoke about Eishes Avi Imai, so that's one generation up, that's the one that Zeiri added. Now the Gemara asks, V'Rav, my time loy choshev le. Why did Rav not mention this one that Zeiri said, that over here the Isser is only for that generation, but not a generation higher than this? So the Gemara answers, because Mechlef alei, because Rav held that over there Chachamim did extend the Gzeira further, because Mechlef alei be'Eishes Avi Aviv. Over there, the case of Eishes Avi Imai could be easily confused with Eishes Avi Aviv. And by Eishes Avi Aviv, Chachamim did make the Gzeira generations higher and higher. Because Eishes Avi Aviv is a Gzeira which is based on an Issa where there's an Erva Mamish. Eishes Aviv is the Erva min ha-Torah. So therefore Eishes Avi Aviv and Eishes Avi Aviv, the Issa goes further and further because it starts with the Issa min ha-Torah. So because Eishes Avi Imai, even though over here it does not start with a case where there could be an Erva min ha-Torah, but nevertheless because it's easily confused with Eishes Avi Aviv, so therefore they didn't extend the Gzeira there further as well. But the Gemara now explains, Zeiri disagrees with this. Zeiri says, Lahasam shchiach, a person, so the relative, so when it comes to the father's wife, that family, over there, that's something that he's more found. The person spends more time there, and therefore he knows clearly, oh, this is my father's family, va'azal, and he goes there. But lahacha l'shchiach va'azal. When it's Eishes Avi Imai, over there, the relation to Avi Imai, he's not found there as often, and therefore that relation, he knows the distinction between them. So we're not concerned that he's going to confuse Eishes Avi Imai with Eishes Avi Aviv. Now, one of the things that Rav mentioned before was Kalosai. That when it comes to Kalosai, a daughter-in-law, that's an erva where Chachamim left it only on that generation and they did not extend it any further. How could you say kalosai? That's an erva min ha-Torah. D'chsiv ervas kaloscha lo yisagala. So it's clearly a isser min ha-Torah. Answers the Gemara, he didn't mean a daughter-in-law, but what he meant is eime kalas benoi. A son's daughter-in-law, that's what Rav was saying, that they kept the isser only for that generation of kalas benoi, but not for the next generation. A daughter-in-law of ben benoi, and so on. Fragt the Gemara, V'kalas b'nai yesh lahefsik? Is that true that when it comes to a daughter-in-law of a son, so the erv is only for that generation and it does not go down a generation lower than that? But Vatanya in a Braisa we learned kalasai erva. your daughter-in-law, so that will be a Erevim Min HaTorah. Kalas Benoi, the daughter-in-law of a son, Shnia. That's a Isser Midrabanan. And V'chein HaToimah, then the Braisa continues and says that we apply and we continue the same Isser Midrabanan, B'benoi, Uben Benoi, Atzev Kol HaDeiros, a grandson, a great-grandson, and so on. The daughter-in-law of Ben Benoi is also going to be Asr Midrabanan. So that can't be what Rav was saying, that the Isser is only limited to that generation of Kalas Benoi. Elo, so therefore the Gemara says, Emes, so rather what you have to say is Kalas Bitoi, the daughter-in-law of your daughter. Over there, that's the case where Chachamim only asked the daughter-in-law of your daughter, but a daughter-in-law of your daughter's daughter and going any generation lower than that Chachamim did not ask her. And again, the point over here is the same thing, because any time the Issa starts with a case where it could be a Issa Min HaTorah, then Chachamim aser the next generation and all further generations. If it starts with a Issa that cannot be Min HaTorah, Chachamim did not aser. Kalas Benoi, when it's your daughter, when it's your son's daughter-in-law. If it was your son's wife, your daughter-in-law, that would be Asa Min HaTorah. So therefore they asked your son's daughter-in-law and your grandson and your great-grandson's daughter-in-law. But when it comes to Kalas Bitoi, there's no such a thing as the wife of your daughter. That would be the beginning, the Issa Min HaTorah. So therefore, the daughter-in-law of your daughter, that's one Issa that they asked, but they didn't ask any future generations. And that's the Nekuda of the whole Gemara over here, that only if it starts with the Issa Min HaTorah did they ask future generations. If not, not. And the Gemara brings the source of this, the Omer Rav Chiste. Rav Chiste said, Ha Milse, Migavre Rabbe Shmieli. This statement that I'm about to say, I heard from a great person. Umanu, who's this great person I heard it from? Rabami. I heard it from Rabami. And what did he say? Loi asru kala ela mipnei kala. The Chachamim asked a daughter-in-law because of a daughter-in-law. A very enigmatic statement. And how do you translate this? What does this mean? Now, va'amru li, who's speaking over here? Rav Chiste. Rav Chiste says, va'amru li kaldoi. The stargazer said to me, malfana havis. You're going to become a great wise man to teach Torah. So Amine, so Rav Chiste says, I said to myself, if that means I'm going to be a great person to teach Torah, a great Talmud Chacham, so Asbara Midaiti, I'll be able to maybe understand and explain on my own what this statement of Rav Ami means, that a kala is also because of a kala. But if all the stargazer meant to say that I'm going to be a teacher of little children, a malamed and for cheder for children, so then maybe I won't understand this on my own. So I'll ask the greater scholars that come to the Beis Medrash what the pshat of this is. That's what he said to himself. But then he concludes and says, Hashte savrata midaiti. I was able to figure out on my own what the statement of Rav Ami means. And it means as follows. Loi osru kalas bitoi, ela mishom kalas benoi. The only reason Chachamim asked your daughter's daughter-in-law is because of your son's daughter-in-law. Because by your son's daughter-in-law, that could come to Issa Min HaTorah. Because the son himself, which is married to his wife, which is your daughter-in-law, that's Issa Min HaTorah. So they asked her the son's daughter-in-law as well. But by your daughter's daughter-in-law, it's not shaykh over there to have an Issa Min HaTorah. So they only asked the daughter's daughter-in-law because of the son's daughter-in-law. That's what he meant. Amalei Abaye l'Rave, so Abaye said to Rave, Asber Eloch, I'll explain it to you. Kagoin Kalse de Bei Bar Tzisoi. It's like the daughter-in-laws of the house of Bei Bar Tzisoi. What does this mean? By the family of Bar Tzisoi. So their sons had daughter-in-laws, their daughters had daughter-in-laws. So when you have these different kinds of daughter-in-laws, that's what we're talking about over here. That the Isser for the daughter's daughter-in-laws is only because of the son's daughter-in-laws. And a similar thing the Gemara says, Rav Papa ma kagon kalsa de Bei Rav Papa bar Abba. Or like the daughter-in-laws of the family of Rav Papa bar Abba. Or Rav Ashia ma kagon kalsa de Bei Mari bar Isik. Or like the daughter-in-laws of the family of Mari bar Isik. So some Rishonim say that the point the Gemara is trying to say with bringing these examples of these families is that not only is it that the whole Isser of the daughter's daughter-in-law is only because of Kalas Benoi, but the whole Isser only applies if Take you have both types of daughter-in-laws. You have Sai in the same family. You have Sai Kalas Benoi and Kalas Bitoi. Then they made the Isser. Now the Gemara has a shaila. This is going back to the shnias that we spoke before in the Braisa. So there was one case that's not mentioned there, and the Gemara has a shaila whether this is included or not. The wife of your mother's brothers, mina aim, but that's not. It's only mina aim that they share the same mother. So the question is, mahu, do Chachamim asa this as well? In the Braise it mentioned Eishes Achia Aim Min Ha'av, that they share the same father. But over here the question is Achi Ha'aim Min Ha'aim. What's going to be the halacha? Is there a Gzeirim B'Darabanan for Erve here or not? Sorry. So the Gemara explains, Eishes Achia Av Min Ha'aim. So what was mentioned in the Braise before? Eishes Achia Av Min Ha'aim. Or Ve'eishes Achi Ha'aim Min Ha'av. So both of those were mentioned that they are aser. Why? The ikke tzad av. Because in both cases, there is an aspect of a father here that brings about the relation. And therefore, I would say, who the Gazer Rabbanan? Over there, the Chachamim made the Gzeira. Aval heiche, the leke tzad av. But if there's no aspect of a father that makes the relation here, it's Eishes Achi Ha'aim. It's a brother from the mother, which Menatayre is not other, Aser at all. And also Mina Aim. The whole relation is because of they share the same mother. So maybe like Gazrubu Rabbanan. Maybe that's too far of Gzeira. That would be a secondary Gzeira, or too far. Chacham did not ask that. Or maybe there's no difference. Maybe because still people call this a grandmother, people call this a grandmother. So there's no difference, as the Gemara will explain now. We'll see. So Rav Safra answers to this question, why should you say that the Issa goes so far? This itself is a Gzeira Midrabanan, so we're going to make a Gzeira L'Gzeira. Right, so the original Gzeira starts with the case of Eishes Achi Ha'av Min Ha'aim. That's the first Gzeira. Then there's a Gzeira of Eishes Achi Ha'aim Min Ha'av. Now you want to add even another Gzeira? Eishes Achi Ha'aim Min Ha'aim. So how can you come and add another Gzeira? We always have a rule, there's no Gzeira L'Gzeira. So the Gemara says, but not necessarily. Maybe over here, it's all considered to be one Gzeira. Why? Amar Rave, so Rave explains, Atu kulu lav Gzeira L'Gzeira ninu. If you look in the Braise, so don't you see that all of them, Rashi says, not all of them mamish, but some of those things that are mentioned in the Braise, they also seem to be a Gzeira L'Gzeira, but nevertheless, we still aser it. And the Gemara explains, Imai erva. A person's mother, that's an erva min ha-Torah. Aim imai shnia. And then the grandmother, that's already a secondary issa. That's the shnia. But the gazru al aim aviv. They also made another gzeira for aim aviv. Why did they make a gzeira for aim aviv? That seems to be a secondary gzeira. Mishum aim imai. It's only a isser because you could confuse it with aim imai, with the grandmother when it's your mother's mother. Now the time emai. What's the reason why they made this secondary gzeira? Because kulu de be'ime rapsi kariluhu. Because people refer to both as grandmother. Whether it's your father's mother or whether it's your mother's mother, they're all referred to as a grandmother. So it's all one gzeira. A similar thing. Eishes aviv erva. Your father's wife is an erva. Eishes avi aviv shnia. And then they added another generation, so that's a shnia. The gazru al eishes avi imai, and they've also added the gzeira of eishes avi imai mishum eishes avi aviv. The time emai, why did they add that as another gzeira? Because kulu de be'aber abba kadule. Again, for the same reason, because both of these are called grandfather. So therefore, it's similar. So it's considered to be one big gzeira. Another case, eishes achia av mina av. If it's an uncle's wife, and when it's an uncle because they share the father, so that's an erva min ha-Torah. That's an erva. Now, eishes achia av mina aim shnia. That's already the ism d'Rabbanan that they added. The gazru al eishes achia aim mina av mishum eishes achia av mina aim, because there's an aspect of a father here, so they added this gzeira as well. But the time emai, what's the reason why they added this, even though it seems to be a secondary gzeira? Mishum de kulu de beidaidi kariluhu, because they're all called an uncle. Whether the uncle is achia aim mina av or achia av mina aim, it's all called an uncle. So therefore they asked the wife. So if so, we come back to our original question, so maybe we could say the same thing over here, even regarding Eishes Achi Ha'aim Min Ha'aim, even though it seems to be even further removed, but it's all called an uncle, and therefore the wife should be Aser. Toshema, so the Gemara brings a raya for this. The Chiyasar of Yehuda bar Shila, when Yehuda bar Shila came, Omar, he said as follows, Omri b'marave, they said in Eretz Yisrael, the following rule, Kol shebenekeva erve. Any nekeva that her level of relation to you, she would be an erva. Bezachar, if instead of her being a nekeva, that level of relation, it would be a zachar. Gazru al ishtay mishum shnia. they decreed that the wife should be aser midrabanan. That's the rule that he brought from Eretz Yisrael. So now the Gemara asks on this rule doesn't make any sense. It can't be true. So Rav asked on this, is this a rule that's true? But we see from many different examples that this is not true, and he brings over here the examples. Chamaisai erva. A mother-in-law is an erva. But if you replace that with a zachar and you add the wife of the zachar, it's not going to be an erva. Eishes chamav. If it would be a father-in-law and the wife of a father-in-law, muteres, like we learned in the Braisa, that's allowed. Another example, Bas Chamaisai Erva. The daughter of a mother-in-law, that's an Erva. That's your wife's sister. But Eishes Ben Chamaisai, the wife of the son of your father-in-law, of your mother-in-law, that is, Muteres. That's allowed. So again, you see that if you replace the Zachar with the Nekeva with a Zachar, that is, the wife of that Zachar is not Aser. Another case, Bas Chamav Erva. Eishes Ben Chamav Muteres. Chargasai erva. A stepdaughter is a erva. Eishes chargasai muteres. But Eishes again. Eishes chargasai muteres. The wife of Chargai, that is again not chargasai. Eishes Chargai, the wife of a stepson, is allowed. As we learned clearly in the Braisa. So again, the point is, you see over here, if you replace the nekeva with a zachar, his wife is going to be mutter. The last case over here, bas chargasai, is erva. The daughter of your stepdaughter, she's going to be an erva because that's your wife's granddaughter. Eishes ben chargai muteres, the wife of the son of your stepson is going to be mutter. So you see that this rule that he said, that if you replace a nekeva with a zachar, and then the wife of that zachar should be aser because of Isma D'Rabbanan, is not a true rule. So regarding what was he saying this? So v'ha that Rav Yehuda Bar Shila, this that Rav Yehuda Bar Shila said, this klal about replacing the nekeva with a zachar, lasuye mai. What was he coming to add? What was he coming to include with this? So lav, doesn't this go back to the case that we asked before? La suye eishes achi ha'eim min ha'eim. The case that we said, this the achi ha'eim min ha'eim, the chol shebenekeva erve. Regarding this, we say that if it would be a nekeva, so it would be a erve bizachar gazru ishtay mishum shniya. That over here, if it's a zachar and then it's the wife of this zachar, the Chachamim wore geyser that the wife should be asam mishum shniya. So therefore, the achi ha'eim min ha'eim will also be aser. So this is the case where we apply this rule that he brought from Eretz Yisrael, but not beneged to any of the other cases. When you replace the nekeva with a zachar, and then the wife of that zachar will not be aser. Over here, though, the wife of this achi ha'eim min ha'eim will be aser. Why? Maishna. What's the reason? Maishna hani or maishna ha. Why in all those other cases that we just mentioned do we say that if it's a wife of a zachar that's similar to the nekeva, over there it'll be mutter, but over here in this case, achia eim and aim, the wife of this achia eim and aim, eishes achia eim and aim, this will be aser. Why is that? Answers the Gemara, the difference is ha b'chad kedusha mikravla. Over here, the eishes achia aim mina aim, the relation to you happens through one marriage, right? Because achia aim mina aim is your uncle. Okay, now in order for this wife to become asa to you, it's just one marriage that makes that relation. The wife that he marries, that creates the relation. Mikravla. But hani, all the other cases that we mentioned before, the ikke, trei, kiddushin, there has to be two marriages that come about like mekravlahu. Not until you have two marriages, there won't be any isser, right? So for example, one of the cases that was mentioned before, eishes chamav, a person's father-in-law's wife, which is going to be mutter to him. Why is she mutter to him? How did this become related to you? First of all, you had to marry your wife. That's how it became your father-in-law. That's one marriage. And second of all, your father-in-law had to marry another wife, and now she became related to you. So this whole relation only came as a result of two different marriages, and therefore it's not as close as a relation, so that the Chachamim did not include in their Isser of Arayas. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Shalach le Rav Misharshim mit Tusnaya le Rav Papi. He sent and asked the question of Rav Papi, Lamdeinu Rabbeinu. Our master, our Rebbe should teach us, Eishes achi avi ha'av. or va'achais avi ha'av. What's the halacha in both of these cases? Is it going to be aser or mutter? Okay, so the Gemara now explains, Rashi over here explains that this is only talking about min ha'av. I mean, Eishes achia via av min ha'av. And the same thing, achais via av min ha'av. That's the shaila, whether going a generation up. I mean, the Braisa mentioned Eishes achi ha'av. So this is taking one generation higher than this. Will this be aser or not? Do I say midelamata erva lamaila nami gozru bey? Since if you go a generation lower, this is going to be a erva min ha'tayra. Eishes achia av is going to be aser min ha'tayra, so therefore going a generation higher. Eishes achia via av, so therefore it's going to be aser as well. Idilme ha'ispelik darsa. Or I say no, that the relation is already too far. You can't go, if you go that far up, it's too far of a relation to you, and therefore the Isser does not apply to this case. Toshama, so the Gemara brings a raya, Mahin Shniyai. So we had before in the Braise where it mentioned all the list of the number of the Shniyais, and it doesn't mention this case that you're asking about, or these two cases that you're asking about, Eishes Achia Via Av, or Achaisa Via Av, they're not mentioned there. Answers the Gemara, but it's not a raya from this. Ton of Vishayir. You could say that the list that we had before, it's left, it leaves over. They left this over. So the Gemara, my shayir, the high shayir, the rule is you can't ever say that the Braisa leaves just one or two cases. There has to be something else that the Braisa left out. What else did the Braisa leave out as well, along with this? Answers the Gemara, shayir shni is the Beir Abchia. There's more isurim in the Rabbanon, which we'll learn later in the Hemshech of the Gemara, which Rab Chia asked, which were not mentioned in this Braisa. So we see that this Braisa is an incomplete list. So therefore we can't bring any raya from here than the fact that it left this out.